been a long day here. Finally starting to break the summer heat here in Tucson after 6 months, and on top of it cooling down, I got a chance to connect with somebody who's going to provide me a little bit of honey, uh, a little bit of uh, a little bit of just essence to continue on a very, very insecure and profound journey that I'm on. And my guess as a musician has really learned, to find his own voice and actually try to play in as many different settings as possible, and many more chapters left to write. Matthew Honeybee Little, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
It's a pleasure to talk to you. I appreciate you reaching out.
Absolutely, man. Hey, I have to ask you about a couple cats. Did you did you ever run across? Um, I'm just gonna run off a few names and
hmm
whatever run you just riff on it from Philly is Sherman Ferguson, Tyrone Brown, Odine Pope, and Pat Martino.
So the last two definitely. Odin Pope. I never got to play with him or anything like that, but the band, The Catalyst, that he
Oh
was
my
part of.
God, dude. That's what I'm like. Honeybee was. I'm like, we
I
were a
mean,
little
come
young for
on.
that. Yeah.
No, but I mean that's a really influential group to me still to this day. And Pat Martino, I did get to see play, post recovery from his amazing accident where he, lost the ability to play and had to regain those skills. And yeah, I got to see him play with Jim Riddle, and it was incredible in Philly.
Wow, I might have been at that gig actually. It's funny. I just wanted you to talk about the essence. I mean, I've interviewed Pat was my first interview 13 years ago, and I've interviewed
Amazing.
Odine. I've been in his house, and just I mean, the fact that he was just woodshedding with Train all day in the 60s is just profound.
Yeah, you can hear it.
And and I wanted you to talk about, even though I mean you're 3 years younger than me, but you still came up in an analog world, and Philly was one of the most analog. I mean, it just can you talk about the essence that those cats,
Oh
uh,
yeah,
instilled in you in terms of keeping your soul, making your soul a little bit older.
absolutely. Well, I mean, if I really go back to my own personal relationship with like the Philly jazz scene and the Philly music scene, it would probably be my parents' introduction to Grover Washington Jr. And being from Mount Airy, he became friends with my parents. So
Oh my
my
God, you're
mom,
going to Never Everland on me, right?
I mean, my mom still a few years back was renting from Grover's wife um, for her psychotherapy clinic for her office.
My
So
God.
just everything is so interconnected here. But just that whole scene of music of Grover really kind of opened my eyes to what was happening in Philly and and the radio. You know, Jazz 90 WRTI is a really important station for back in the day. There were programs like The Bridge, which was like the bridge between jazz and hip hop. And I just, really got immersed in what was happening around the city. And that really led me to going to the clubs at about 15, 16 years old. So,
This is profound. No, I need you to tell me about Grover because you know what? I've been Billy Cobb and him were in the army with Roger Glenn in New Jersey. I mean, the Grover that's like, I mean, he will just go to the moon. But I just behind that sound, can you just talk about the man a little bit and ultimately like, what he meant to you, the kind of relationship your family had with him?
well, it's odd, but my dad resembles Grover. Um,
Oh yeah, I know. I'm
particularly
believing
on
this, dude. Yeah, I dig it.
you
I
know
dig it.
the
I
album
dig it.
cover, the album cover where he's coming out of the water.
Oh, my favorite, Mr. Magic, dude.
The Mr. Magic album cover. Okay, that's that album. Okay. That image looks so similar to my dad. And I know that my dad connected with him through that. It just so happened that we lived in the same area, same neighborhood as him, It just means that, the same video store, the same everything, the same church communities. So he was really just a family man and pretty low key like most of the musicians here, and they tend to do their work all over the world. Like when Bobby McFerrin was living here, or even like currently, there's a bunch of cats that are based here. Might play here a little bit, but really they play all over the world.
Wow. Wow. No, what about Mickey Roker too, man?
Ah, Mickey Roker's incredible,
I gotta send you
incredible.
some of these. These guys help me find my voice. But I mean,
Okay, Mickey Roker, and
yeah.
then Ralph Peterson. I have to say as well in the Philly scene. I mean, yeah,
I want you
Mickey
to know, I mean,
definitely.
even going back to Sherman was a little bit older than us. He was a different generation. Ty Brown, beautiful, and Eddie Green, I think, was already. Did you ever meet Eddie or no?
No.
Okay.
Mm-mm.
So, can you talk specifically about those early 70s Catalyst albums on Unity? Because, and what it did to your ear? Because, it was before they didn't really have vocals, if I remember correctly. They didn't
Right,
sing, I don't think, but it was mainly instrumental. Al Johnson was the first bass player. A lot of cats don't know that. And
right.
I just, for your ear, what did it do? What did it tell? How did it stretch your ears out?
Okay, just the approach to the use of the Rhodes and the effects pedals on the Rhodes, the effects on the flute melodies, the super heavy reverb, just kind of brave moves that I think people play safe when it comes to like sound textures. Back then, it was much more bold and experimental. But underneath it all, there's these jazz harmonies and jazz grooves, but it was also very much in the spiritual realm. There's percussion that, like, is much more mystical. There are modal sections. So yeah, I just loved it. And it was very imperfect music, and then how they made it all relate to the elements, and yeah, just getting into the mysticism, but without it being completely avant-garde, like Sun Ra, which Sun
Absolutely. No,
Ra
it's
is,
very
you
mystical,
know
but it was still inside, a little bit.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And for
The
me, I
yeah, go
mean,
ahead.
really how I got into their music was this DJ Manny, who was sampling, on an old sampler, Gemini sampler, back in like '94, and he was cutting up some songs from Catalyst, and then I went out and got the CD. It's like a double disc CD, and it just like opened my ears, and that's about '94. So I was late to the game. That had happened, decades before, but
Um,
that's when I found it.
okay, so well, I mean, come on. I don't know. Basically, this what was it called? The Bridge, this radio
Yeah, the
station in Philly.
bridge.
And I wanted, were there actual, seems so crazy to say this because we've been so in, you know, corporate connected radio. I mean, it's just all cumulus and it's all connected now. But before, even in the 90s, were there local shows? Explain what you mean by the merging of jazz and hip hop. Is Catalyst a perfect example of that?
Well, actually, it would be the where I would hear Gil Scott Heron. I would hear oh, what type of more of the poet world. Say the Last Poets,
Last Poets,
or
yeah.
Sonia Sanchez, Philly native poet here, and they would play more of that stuff. They would also play like Buckshot LaFunk, and like more of, I guess, what you would call acid jazz for a moment, where there were some beats going on and people were improvising. So it was not like the straight ahead show, but it was definitely not like rappers. You know what I mean?
Ah, I dig. I
It was
dig.
the bridge. And like, honestly, Gil
Wow.
Scott Heron, if you listen back to some of that music, that is kind of a bridge between the jazz world and the hip hop world, because of the spoken word elements, but also because of the groove, and because of the chord choices and everything else. So
What do you, this is just explain in your mind, like, a lot of people, I mean, I'm sure that maybe, who knows what your educational path is and you can explain that, but, like people talk about that Great American Songbook and having a huge bag of tunes.
mhm.
Um, and the melodies within those classic tunes. I mean, it's melodic. And when I think of Gil Scott, I almost think it's more a merging of the beat poets with jazz.
Yes,
Because in hip hop, there's no melodies, it's all rhythm, you know?
I feel you. Absolutely. So
Now, so
that's the departure. That's definitely what the tone, like as soon as you hear the tone of voice and like them staying on one pitch or all of that, that's just like part of the signature sound.
were you somebody, Honeybee, where you would go and hang out with and watch Sid Simmons play, or were you actually playing Ortlieb's too? I really want to talk about your sort of early bandstand experiences.
Oh yeah. Okay, so early on, I just taught myself piano until I was 16 years old. So at about 15, I started playing with a band of just friends. And that was all self-taught up until that point.
Mm.
We started going to the clubs then. That's when I would go to Ortlieb's. We would be watching. There were some people our age playing, like the Super Lowry brothers, Chris and Wes Lowry. That scene was starting there. And it was kind of like the Young Lions of Philly. Actually, they called it that.
I really have to be. I just want to stop you right there. Like you were seriously born at the most perfect. I mean, timing is everything in life,
You know what I mean?
but you were like the last generation to catch that. That is so beautiful, man. Go ahead.
Yeah. And so I would go there and I was super scared to play. I was very basic at that point. But then when I was 16, I started looking at colleges, and the only colleges I wanted to go to was going to be for music, and they all required private lessons. So I got myself a teacher. Really, my parents found a teacher, and it was Barry Sames, who's an incredible jazz player. I don't know if you're
Can you
familiar with
talk about?
Barry.
I mean, no, I really. Where does he fit into the whole Philly scene? Because I don't pretend to. Is he a different generation than Odin and those guys?
Yes, but he played with so many of the legends because Barry's like just the cat on keys. I can't even
I'm
tell
gonna
you.
have to talk to that cat immediately. Yeah, and I'm sure he's like was he playing with Sam Reed in New Jersey? Like this, where was this guy? What was this guy doing?
So Barry was more of the jazz vespers church world.
Dig.
That's where he lives sort of now in that space, and he's amazing. But for a while he had I don't know if you remember the phase of contemporary jazz where you might have some synths and stuff, some really cool melodies, some sung vocals that are maybe, Pat Metheny-ish.
Hmm.
He had some of those types of groups. One was called In Sync, before In Sync was out. But yeah, Barry is, I mean, he's just incredibly
Dude, this dude
versatile.
sounds like a freaking monster. Was he kicking pedals in the church or playing
Uh,
B3 or?
pretty much. And then he went out to LA and did some work for Richard Simmons for a while.
Oh my,
Um,
are you
yeah,
kidding me?
but then he was really, it wasn't his vibe, so he came back here and he started doing like
What
he
is his
did this whole
vibe?
circuit in Turkey for a while. He was going back and forth for a residency in Istanbul. But yeah, he is always doing his thing, always doing his thing. He's amazing.
What did he instill? What did he give you more? Like philosophic knowledge. I mean, I just know that like at a certain point, Alan Dawson looked at Harvey Mason in the late '60s, and at Berkeley was like, I can't teach you anything,
Yeah.
so let's just play games. And they'd play games on vibes and drums, whatever. I mean, I'm just curious about the sort of the seminal sort of teaching that you hang on to this day from him, even though you guys have been been going at it for a while.
I think Barry really instilled in me to like feel the music in my entire body and have like a full experience when playing so that you can really feel the rhythm and get into like the micro rhythms of music. And when you're being funky, to actually be funky, like you kind of have to move your whole body or your whole arms. And just, he didn't tell me to do that, but he definitely showed me how to do that. It's like, oh, you're playing that, but like, listen to the difference of how I play it. Uh, when I give it its full sauce, and I'm looking at him, and I'm really absorbing the fact that he feels it head to toe. Um, if there's just no part of him that's not in the music and in the rhythm of the music, so he's deep in the pocket. That's
And you
something
talk
that I
about though
got
as
from him.
a keyboardist, I mean, in terms of like, because I hear you 100% when I go, when I don't have to sit. I mean, that's one of the things with jazz. It's basically a sit down music in terms of the audience,
Mhm.
but the idea of like micro rhythms and just getting into the groove of discarga and healing, like that is absolutely seminal for me. But as a
Yeah,
player, it's a delicate balance because you're not always playing heavy fusion music, and part of it's like you can't. It's just because you're using their whole body and being physical doesn't mean that you can hit the keys harder. So it's really a matter of like you have to
right.
learn. You have to learn to like almost tap dance out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Or as big as the music is, you should feel that big through, head to toe. As small or as quiet as the music is, you should also be able to get there dynamically. But either way, you have to embody the music and not just let it be in your fingers, like a full just immersion of being in the moment.
What do you think? Do you think that labels have um, really hurt the ability for there's so much amazing music being I mean not, there's just a lot of amazing cats out there that we're just saturated in visual material now from the internet.
Yes.
It's not as nearly much of an auditory sort of gig anymore, and um I just wonder about if you feel like you've always or have you changed or evolved in the way of approaching things like from the Duke Ellington school where it's all music. Yeah, I remember when Pat Martino did this album. He want Baina. It was a fusion of
Mhm.
jazz and Indian raga music, and he
Yeah, I
wanted
was just talking about that one to somebody. That
and
one
he
and Fire Dance, that's another one
Fire Dance. I don't think I know that one.
with Zakir Hussain.
Yeah, no, but Pat really wanted Ravi Shankar, and I asked him. I said,
Okay.
how do you even get connect with Ravi?" And when he was in John Handy's band in the late '60s with Bobby Hutcherson, Robbie lived in the Haight Ashbury. So my point is
Mhm.
that you had Indian raga, jazz, psychedelic rock, everything was, and it was really a Duke Ellington bag. And you're playing with very different kinds of musicians. And I'm not talking about the bands themselves. Do you feel like we need, as a society or a culture, to wean ourselves off of labeling the music?
Um, I think we kind of have done that to a point. It's like there are multiple worlds that are happening simultaneously. You have to code switch when you're talking about something from maybe a analytical or business standpoint where you understand that people need a category for XYZ and that's how their brain functions. But generally speaking, as an artist, as a creative, and as a listener, I think we've pretty much gotten rid of that. If you look at like the way festivals are mixed up, the way genres, quote unquote, are mixed up, the way fan bases are diverse in different ways. I don't think that all that stuff really exists to listeners as much as it used to. I think it just exists in an alternate world that also has to function, I guess, in order for the music to reach our ears.
I mean, I've just a couple times I've gone to quote unquote blues festivals and there's been no black bands on the bill. And
I
then
believe you.
I go to jazz festivals and and it's all R&B. So I'm not
Yes.
sure. I don't know how. I'm just pushing back. I mean, I don't know if people just maybe that's what you mean. I don't know. I mean, it seems a little bizarre that like at least to the roots of where's the tradition of the music? Are there changes within the music? Like, is there I guess the better question is, do you feel like there's an increase going? Is there the ability to increase vocabulary in melodic improvisation? Some people might call that jazz. It just seems
Mm.
to me like when I listen to you sing for your supper with many different artists playing all kinds of music, and and the point is that do you believe that there's a market or even a marketplace for music or individual sound to grow? Because everybody prided themselves on that. I
Right.
don't care if it was Mickey Rourke or David Garibaldi or whoever it was. They'd be like, somebody came up to them and was like, "Hey man, you sounded great. You sounded just like Sam Lay or something." They want to slit their wrists. They wanted
Right.
that individuality. Is there a room for individuality, my brother? That's really what I'm getting at.
Yes, there is. And I think it probably exists in the live space more than the recorded space,
Ah,
you know? And I think we can actually control it a little bit more if that's what it is. But it also lives more in the underground and not in the mainstream. And people need to understand, like, okay, do you want something to blow up? Do you want something to be huge? Or do you want to enjoy it where it is in the underground? Like, you just kind of have to like be happy wherever you're receiving the music rather than really just say wish XYZ was on, Blue Note, for example, because they're such a great label. It's like, no, maybe you heard them without a label and you still heard them, you know? So I don't know.
I dig it a
That's
hundred. I dig it a hundred
yeah,
percent. I mean, it's like if you're going to get too big, then all of a sudden you're going to lose most likely that creative control of whatever made you hip to begin with. But it's like
right.
um, I think I love that it's in the lives. And what do you mean in the live setting? Like for you, are there um like in this band
Like
Haley Reinhardt, I mean, I was very inspired by this clip, and it was, but I just wonder, like, do you ever play the same song the same way once with her, or um, what is she? She's not a formula trip cat.
no, there are some arrangements, but there's also maybe some dynamic differences from show to show. And depending on what the band formation is, the arrangement will change as well. But the most enjoyable part of playing with her, beyond the fact that her voice is incredibly uh, in tune instrument to play with, is that her presence and delivery like brings something that everyone in the band has to match, just to deserve to be on the stage. So what I really love about her is that each note and each breath is what is conducting the entire band. It is not a voice over top of a sheet of music. It is her voice, like the front, um, I don't know, goose in a V line of geese flying south. You know what I mean? Like her voice is it, and it's every breath to the point where she cuts off her note and everybody stops playing. And I just love that. It's just super satisfying.
How have you increased the? Have you? How have you sort of? What was the reason she brought you into the band? I mean, I feel like good leaders bring people in to do what they do well and maybe push themselves out of their own comfort zone. I'm just wondering what you've brought to the band because, um, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it sort of struck me as like sort of like some sort of Etta James Blackbirds gig, you know?
Yes. So here's the deal: is I was a fan of her music. I saw her when she did her run on American Idol. I always liked her. She would pop up around LA while I was living in LA, and I'd see her at Hotel Cafe, just performing. I never met her or anything like that. And I just dug her. Time goes by, and her guitarist is someone who I work with quite a bit. We were doing a lot of studio work together for a different artist.
Yeah.
And we were going to go on tour, and he couldn't go out with us because he was going out with her on the road. So I told him, I was like, hey, man, sorry we can't have you on this one, but I would love to play for her if she ever has, an opportunity. And about 2.5 years ago, or just over 2 years ago, that opportunity came. Her last keyboardist moved on to working with another band. I think that's reggae, and that's like his bag. So it's like the perfect situation for him. And she needed someone, and he remembered that I said I like the music, and I'm just at this phase where I only want to work with people that I like,
Yeah.
musically and personally, but it's got to feel good. Like I gotta, I almost want to pursue my opportunities. It's great to get what comes to you, but you know, there's nothing wrong with being direct and saying, "Hey, I really like what you do, and I really think I can support you if you ever need it."
Wait a minute. This cat that you knew, how did you know the reggae pianist?
I didn't know the former pianist. He just got another gig, and the guitarist,
Oh, the
who's still her,
guitarist was like,
yeah,
yo,
he was the link, and he was like, "Oh, I
oh
know
my
someone right
God,
away."
dude, that is such a sick link right there.
Right, because he plays with Josef Leimberg, who I'm
Well,
musical
that
director
dude, I
for.
mean, what he is from the intergalactic, man.
Yes, I could talk for days about him. He's
Well,
amazing.
no, riff on him because I was watching that video and he's mixing it all together, but really like real heavy. Do you feel like I think before we get into him, I not for how long in your because I mean you make it seem so easy. You went out to LA, obviously you had success there. I mean, it's really hard to make it today
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
music business out there. I mean, it's nearly impossible without the studio scene. And so, how long? Because it really, the nicest thing is that you can actually pick and choose what you want to play or the kind of gigs you want to take. But
Right.
can you talk, especially younger cats out there, about maybe a learning experience being on the road or really doing something for the money or because and you realized in the end it wasn't worth it because it was a drag.
Oh, um, yeah, absolutely. Um, I mean, do you want me to name names?
No, I did. I don't want you to do it. No, absolutely not. I mean, you know what I'm saying? You know what it is? Maybe the better question is
because I
how many.
could, I could. I
Sure,
really
no,
it doesn't,
absolutely. I
you
don't,
know.
but that's not what my show's about. I really don't give a
Okay.
shit.
So
But
so let me put
yeah,
it like this. Let's
yeah.
just say there was a week of filming I did for a streaming service, and it was because it was connected to a major rap mogul. Okay. And it was one of those things. It turned out to be absolutely terrible on every level. Just personally in the room, the way he was treating people, the way people would get fired, the threats, all sorts of things, just like the grimy stuff. And then the nerve to withhold payment is just wild because it was already pretty much a basic day rate on the LA scale level. But yeah, things like that, and it's just like, oh, I'm over it. I'm good. Just because you wear huge diamonds around your neck, honestly
Right.
doesn't mean I'm going to get my
Give me a
paycheck.
break, dude. Give me a break.
It doesn't.
But that is,
And
you know what, man? That is the racket. That is the racket, man.
but yeah, and it's just funny because like you can be asked to do something from someone who's pretty major and end up really not getting paid, at least not getting paid correctly. Or you could play at a backyard event low key and end up walking away with what they said they were going to give you and
Right.
having a great time with great musicians. So, I mean, what do you really want to have as your memory in life? Do you want to be able to tell people that you were in the room with XYZ and they treated you like dirt? Or do you want to tell people you had a good time over there in the neighborhood?
Dude, I am so, you're putting honey on the biscuit for me, man. You're
I mean,
making my
that's just
night, dude.
fact.
I had like a very, like, I don't know if there's Mercury in retrograde or something. My head was all clouded up, but this has just blown. I mean, but I mean, it's understand. You have to, I guess maybe the question is, what were your steady sources of like what were your gigs in LA? I mean, there's no way you were like playing jazz. It wasn't like I mean, even in Philly in the
Oh,
'90s.
I
Yeah.
was playing with these Philly cats. I mean, this is a big gig for me. Was
Wow.
playing with Chris and Wes Lowry, twin brothers from Philly, from Germantown.
Wow.
And they live out there
Wow.
now. And they
Wow.
kind of come back and forth. They still play around here. They were just at the Blue Note last week, I think. But yeah, so I started playing with them as a trio player. So I played piano and played left hand bass, just on the piano.
Yeah.
And we played everywhere all the time, but we particularly played at this fancy hotel over in Santa Monica 3 nights a week for a time period. And that place introduced us to tons of people, celebrities, musicians, and everything, and people who hired us, and just led to one thing and another, and yeah, tons of
Well,
work
I mean,
that
like,
just
like,
kept
wait, hold
coming.
on. What was the name of the hotel?
Shutters on the Beach.
Shutters. So what's the room? What's the room like? Is it like a Hunter S. Thompson kind of room, or is it real? I mean, I'd love you to
It's
talk
it's a 5-star hotel, and it's right on the beach.
about.
Like, I could not afford a night there. I'll tell you that. But
Right.
it's a
So
nice
but the point is,
place.
talk about a couple or a memorable moment when you guys were like, sort of just starting to shed there, and then all of a sudden, like, I don't know.
Well, okay, here's a
Yeah.
big thing is we were playing, and who walks in but Dave Chappelle. And
Yes. Yes. I was,
he he leans on the piano, and he's like, "Can you play um Round Midnight?" And I start playing Round Midnight. We start playing it. And he's like, "Oh," he's like, "Can you play In a
oh my
Sentimental Mood?" And I start playing the Sentimental Mood. And he's like, "Oh, you guys are killing it." And then we just start talking. We take a break, start having drinks. We're chilling. He ends up going out with the trumpet player and the drummer later on that night, and they get tattooed. They become friends. He comes back the next night. We're just chilling. He's like, "Hey, you guys wanna go to the Comedy Store?" So we hop in his car and he drives us to the Comedy Store. He introduces us to everyone: Pauly Shore, Joe Rogan, Chris D'Elia. I mean, honestly, it was like a dozen
Yeah, this
top
is mine. This is
comedians,
blowing my
right?
mind right now, dude.
And he ends up
Oh my
having us
God.
do the process, and the process was him building his show up for the first Netflix special. So we played as his band for all those shows.
Oh my
They were
God.
at Hotel Cafe, at No Vacancy, at just all these little places around LA, little pop-ups. Wouldn't tell anybody. And we would just riff with him, you know, just because we had vibe. And
Dude,
yeah,
this is one
so
of the
that led up
baddest
to the
stories I have. Wait, I mean,
that
hold on. These
so that led
and
up
this.
to
Yeah.
we did the first Netflix special that he did at the Palladium.
Wow.
We played that. We opened that up for him. We're not on any of the video, but we played that event because he hooked us
Why
up.
wasn't the video player on?
Yeah, I
No,
mean,
wait, I want to be clear. You guys, Chris and Wes Lowry, they're from Philly with you. What was the band a quintet or a trio?
it was a trio, but if we could build it bigger, if there was a bigger gig, we would build a bigger band for sure. We had bass players that would play with us. Just for that hotel gig, that was a trio gig for sure.
Um, were like I haven't seen those series, but were there moments where he was like scat singing over you guys?
He had his favorites who do like Killing Me Softly. He super loves that song. There's a couple songs that he would play on piano too, from now and again, but really he would just make stuff up as we would go. He'd be
That's
like,
so
this is
ridiculous.
my
That is
man Wes. Hey
ridiculous.
Wes, drop a beat. And then Wes would drop a beat, and we would be off stage, and he would call us up on stage. Let me get the trumpet player up here, and he would come up and he'd start playing whatever, some quote from Biggie Smalls or whatever on the trumpet. And so I'd hear that, and of course I'd just support that. I'd just play, you know.
Oh
So
my God.
it was fun, you know. We played a bunch of gigs with him. Um, yeah, and
And I mean,
actually,
that was, I mean, the idea there was like, that was through the whole time. I mean, that was a big production that lasted how long?
probably about 2 years. It was like 2 years that we were really playing with him off and
Right.
on.
Um,
And then
yeah.
he had the band do the Radio City gigs when he did 10 nights in a row in Radio City Music Hall.
Right.
However, I wasn't on keys on that. They had T Nava from Anderson Paak's band, the Free Nationals, on
Right.
keys. He's our other family member.
Talk about, as much as you can. I mean, the family that you astoundingly were connected with from back in Philly. You guys went together. I mean,
Okay, okay. Let me back up. Let me back
yeah,
up.
please.
Okay, I went to elementary school in Mount Airy at this place called Houston School, and at that school, I was a year behind the Lowry brothers. They were in the jazz band. They didn't know me, but I would see them play in the jazz band as a child from like kindergarten, first grade up till eighth grade. Okay. Then when I get to high school, I would see them playing at Ortlieb's, you know, and I'd be
Yeah,
like, okay,
sure.
they're still playing. That's cool. But I didn't know them. And then I moved to LA. I was there for a couple years. When they moved to LA from New York, our mutual Philly friend from New York said, hey, you guys should link with Matt Little in LA. So they called me up out of the blue with a recommendation from a mutual friend in New York and said, hey, we got a gig. And that was at the Temple Bar, a great place in Santa Monica that's no longer there. And I was like, cool. So I showed up to the gig. I played the gig. They had no idea that I even went to their elementary school until I told them. You know what I mean?
I did. I did.
So
I mean,
like,
they were what, like 2 or 3, 4 years older than you, pretty
yeah,
much.
they're
Yeah.
I think they were a grade, but they're 2 years older than me.
Right. Right. So they were totally oblivious to you staring at them in kindergarten.
Yeah, I'm a little
Yeah.
kid and I wasn't in the jazz band. I was
Right.
just
Right.
there, just
Wow.
some kid.
Wow. So then, so that they moved out there in what year?
Oof. I want to say like 2008, 2000, something like that.
Right. And then would you say that, like, I mean, can you talk a little bit about, I guess there's some philosophical stuff that I wanted to get with you on, is just, um,
They're
when
the
you
grind.
guys, what's
Let me
that?
tell you. Okay,
Yeah.
so they're the grind. Here's the deal.
Yeah.
They are twin brothers. That is not like normal. Okay, it's not like regular brothers or regular sisters or whatever you want to call it, because the twin connection is like um, I don't know. It's a bond that is beyond. So their grind
Absolutely.
when they're out there to hustle a gig or play somewhere or bring the music to more intensity or whatever, they're going to do it together and they're going to do it until it gets there, you know. So when it comes to booking and like traveling or whatever, they're going to do it. Now I busked with them, so I played on the streets of the Third Street Promenade. We used to take trips up to San Francisco and sell CDs playing on the street with a generator,
Dude, this is
you
so
know.
bad. This is so
But playing on
fucking
the
weird.
street with a generator, we met, Don Cheadle. Just all these different people. LA and San Fran are just they're popping like that. So, and if you're playing something that catches people's ear, that's important. Um, but yeah, and we know who these people are. We're like, hey, like, you know, even Spike Lee, like, he really loved the band.
Dude, these are all the cats, man. I mean, you guys
I
are
know
obviously,
it's
I want
it's
to be clear though.
wild.
Can you talk about this? Is so the chemistry when they called you up and you started to play at the uh I forget
At
the name.
Shutters.
The show no, the bar, the first gig you guys had out there.
Oh yeah, at the Temple Bar.
Right. Was it like was there, how quickly did you become sort of just reacting to, how much was there just sort of a telepathy that was going on within the music insofar as like, especially trust, because
Oh,
just to
it
get a
took a
groove
while.
going. I mean, like it's not, you make it sound easy, but like
No,
with
it
a
took a while.
generator, yeah.
No, I'm
Oh,
not gonna lie. My left hand skills is only as a result of playing that gig, because part of their hustle was like, man, if we can do this gig with 3 people, we can make a couple extra bucks. So let's see if we can do that. I was like, all right, I'm not really a key bass player, but it got to the point where I was actually playing 2 keyboards or splitting my keyboard into a key bass. Of course, on the piano gigs, doing the piano trio thing. But honestly, musically, it took me a lot to catch up to where they are. And then to be able to solo, because they play all the standards, but they'll also cover some hip hop stuff too. But Chris is a very apt trumpet player, so he wants to play some stuff. So it was always pushing. And just to keep time with Wes when there's no bass player, during the drum solos, all that stuff is an incredible shed. And it was a learning curve because
oh
they've
my
been
God,
playing
the
with each
shed,
other
man.
since, they're playing with each other for their whole lives, since they're in second grade. And I'm new to that unit. So like it took me some time, but by the time I got there and understood their language, and yeah, man, it's just like it's sweet. It's so much fun playing with them.
Um, were there was it an acoustic group or was there electronics involved?
It was more electronic, but only acoustic on that one gig that was pretty standing.
Well, no, because so what I'm saying is like I remember when I interviewed John Densmore, he talked about in the studio, Ray Manzarek just played left hand bass with the Doors, and I'm not comparing the styles of music, but with
Yeah,
for the records they wanted a little more punch, so they brought in Harvey Brooks or Lee
right.
Scott, people like that to add some extra. And I mean, how is it just a matter of just sort of getting more playing with these guys, and that's how you kind of developed a timbre and were able to sort of because left hand bass, I mean,
Yeah,
especially with a unit like that, I mean, that is not. Can you talk a little bit about
yeah.
uh,
It's
that?
hard. So
Yeah.
here's the deal: is like when you play as a keyboardist, generally speaking, you play to support the lead as well as kind of give the harmony and stay out of the way of other things that are happening, right? You want to interact with everybody on a level. When you're playing bass, you you kind of support the kick drum. It's like you're supporting the lead, but you're locking in with the kick and you're locking in with the groove in a different way. So what I realized is I just had to start like locking in my left hand with my right hand and making the bass player sound like it's really locked in with the keys player. Meanwhile, locking in my bass left hand with the kick. So I'm thinking about the kick drum, but I'm acting as though my right hand is playing with my left. And so it leaves a lot of space for the melody because I don't support the melody the same way I would when I'm not playing left hand bass. I'm a lot more colorful when I'm not playing left hand bass as far as supporting the lead. So I had to let go of that. I had to realize that my job was different. My job is to give that foundation and that, meat and potatoes and stay locked in, don't sound out of the pocket.
Um, have
It's
you
like
had a
juggling.
chance? Yeah, I mean that's phenomenal. Have you? Did you? What are you in your mind? What are the best qualities of leadership on the bandstand?
Listening to ideas, kind of processing everybody's strengths, um, and being supportive. I mean, I've seen literally the opposite. I was just talking to some musicians about, you know, how you might see someone on the bandstand literally berate someone or embarrass them because of something that they did musically. And for me, it's just like that's never going to get you the result of better music, and the result should always be striving for better music. So why would you put that sort of energy out there? So yeah, that's that's how I feel.
You been a leader yourself?
I have led, even just for Josef Leimberg, I was musical director as well as tour manager for one of his tours, which was a whole other experience.
Oh my God. Can you talk about
Yeah,
Brother Leimberg? Like, how did you connect with him? And then
yeah.
there's some real psychedelicized stuff going on.
Let me just tell you before I say anything else about him
Yeah.
that his next set of albums, I mean, this first one, but all of the ones that follow that are already recorded are absolutely game changing, incredible musical experiences. The same way I felt when, say, some of Kamasi's music came out, the same sort of scale and depth and orchestral and just
Eh.
insight.
Wow.
And
Wow.
yeah,
Wow.
I'm really excited about it. I have the first album in my possession in some form, and it's so incredibly moving, and I'm so happy to be a part of it. Um, yeah, along with literally 60 plus other legendary musicians. So yeah, can't wait
Well,
for that. But I'll
can
tell you
you,
how
can
we
you,
met
yeah. No, but
if
you
you
know what I'm
want to
curious
know.
about before you go? I mean, like, it
Yeah.
sounds like there's this huge canon of material. I mean, how come he's going to
Yeah.
release multiple albums at one time?
Probably not at one time.
But
Probably
there's a
not at
lot
one
in the
time.
can.
Yeah. And I
Wow.
think it's going to be much more than just an album release. I'm sure he's going to do a whole visual campaign that he's been hinting at through some sort of AI video creation world that coincides with the music. Um,
Wow.
so we'll see what that comes of because I know I've sent him some images of myself to be used for some video creation. So it's going to be something pretty big.
And like you said, there's it does feel like it might be timeless music.
Yeah, absolutely. 1000%.
So yeah,
1000%.
tell me how you connected. I mean, again, do you feel like you've in some ways, I don't know if you ever had these issues, but you know, um, have you just sort of left? When did you sort of cast your fate to the wind, so to speak, or let the muse guide you to find cats that are in the intergalactic?
Well, check this out. Um, I was dating this beautiful young lady named Samantha. We were in that sort of new 2 week, first 2 week phase,
For sure.
holding hands, walking down the street, and she said, you should really meet my friend's brother because he makes music like the music that you like. And I was like, cool, just like that. And we walk about two more blocks, and guess what? He rolls by in his Cadillac and he yells out the window, "Hey, Samantha." And she turns and she's like, "That's him. That's Joseph."
Oh,
And I'm like, "Hey, what's happening?"
oh
So he
no.
pulls over. He pulls over. She says, Matt plays keys. You should meet him. Joseph's like, "What kind of stuff do you play?" And I was like, "I kind of live in the place of, the chords that Tribe Called Quest likes. I like to do samples. I like to do stuff like that." And he said, "Do you want to record?" And I was like, "Yeah." He was like, "You want to record right now?" I hopped in his Cadillac. Both of us
No
got in.
way,
We
dude.
went directly to his studio and we started recording. And I recorded on some track for him, something that he was doing, I think, for the Dog Pound or something, or maybe Latoya Williams. I don't know. At that phase, he was working with a lot of different artists, but
Wow.
it was like instantly like, "Yep, I want to be back here." And he was like, "Yep, I'm going to be calling him back." It was just like that. Like she had just mentioned him and he just pulled up and called her name. And she made the introduction, and he was like, "Let's go right now." And that's exactly what happened.
Dude,
How about that?
I don't know, man. I don't know what else to say.
I know, I
That's
know.
Philadelphia's spot. That is some of the baddest. That's beautiful, man.
And just like the studio that he owns, Ironworks, is just such a great creative space. So we just spent a lot of time digging into the sounds that we create together, which I just can't wait for this next album. It's gonna be so amazing.